The phone rang at 3:20 in the afternoon. Just like that, my world split into a before and an after, living and dying, truth and lies. "Mary, it's your mother. You need to come now," Uncle William's voice cracked, something I had never heard in my 65 years of knowing him. "She's had a heart attack. They're working on her at St. Mary's." My fingers went numb. The coffee mug slipped from my grasp, shattering against the kitchen tiles. Dark liquid spilled across the white floor, spreading out like blood. "Stephen!" I called out, my voice echoing through the silence of our too-big house. "Stephen, I need you." He appeared in the doorway of his office, wireless earbuds still in place, a look of annoyance etched across his face. "I'm on a call," he said flatly. "My mother had a heart attack," I told him, each word shaking. "I need you to drive me to St. Mary's." He sighed, that dismissive exhale I had grown so familiar with over 23 years. "I've got the Peterson merger meeting in 30 minutes. Can't you take an Uber?" I stared at the coffee as it seeped into the grout, creating thin brown lines that reminded me of the veins on my mother's hands. My voice hardened. "My mother's dying," I said, clear and sharp. "And you're worried about a meeting? Don't be so dramatic, Mary. Your mother's always been healthy as a horse." He tapped one of the earbuds. "I need to get back to this call." Something inside me snapped. Maybe it was patience. Maybe it was the last thread of pretense I had left. "You know what? Never mind. I'll drive myself," I said, grabbing my keys. "That's my girl," he replied, already turning back toward his office. Always so independent. My hands were shaking as I left. The coffee stayed where it was, an unclean testament to the moment my afternoon shattered. The drive to St. Mary's was a blur, red lights, horns blaring, but I couldn't focus on anything except getting there. My phone buzzed nonstop. Aunt Stephanie, Sharon, Uncle William. I ignored every call. I couldn't split my attention between driving and the reality waiting for me at the hospital. When I finally arrived, I parked crookedly across two spaces. Let them tow it. Let the whole world collapse. My mother needed me. The emergency room smelled like disinfectant and fear. Uncle William stood near the intake desk, his usually pristine suit wrinkled, silver hair disheveled. "Where is she?" I asked as soon as I saw him. He pulled me into a hug, something I wasn't prepared for. "They're still working on her. Stephanie's back there. They only allowed one person." "Stephen?" he asked, looking past me. "Meeting," I said, the word bitter on my tongue. His jaw tightened. Uncle William never liked Stephen, though he was always too polite to say it out loud. Of course Stephen wasn't here. A doctor appeared suddenly, still wearing surgical gloves, the front of his scrub stained. My mother's blood. My heart dropped. "Mrs. Nicholas?" he said. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. "I'm sorry. We did everything we could." The words crashed over me, cold and final, like ice water. My knees buckled, and Uncle William's arm tightened around my shoulders, holding me upright. "Would you like to see her?" the doctor asked gently. I shook my head. Not yet. I wanted to remember her alive, laughing in her garden last Sunday, telling me about the new rose bushes she planted, telling me I deserved better, that it wasn't too late to start over. My phone buzzed again. Stephen's face appeared on the screen. I didn't answer. He was probably calling to check on dinner or complain about his meeting. I hit silence and slipped the phone back in my pocket. "Sharon's on her way," Uncle William said softly. "She was in class when Stephanie reached her." I nodded, staring blankly at the silent phone in my hand. 23 years of marriage, and my husband couldn't bother to drive me to my mother's deathbed. The thought landed in my chest like a stone, heavy and unmoving. Mom was right. It's not too late. Sharon burst through the ER doors moments later, a whirlwind of dark hair and panic. Her mascara was smudged, her cheeks tear-streaked, but she was here. She looked so much like me at her age that, for a second, I couldn't breathe. "Mom." She ran into my arms, and I held her close, breathing in the strawberry shampoo she'd been using since high school. "I got here as fast as I could. Is Grandma?"
I didn't need to say it.
I just shook my head against her shoulder. She stiffened, then leaned back to look at me. "Where's Dad?" she asked. The question sliced through me. I hesitated, but before I could answer, Aunt Stephanie appeared. Her face was pale and drawn, her arms outstretched. Sharon looked back at me again, waiting. "He had a meeting," I said quietly. "The Peterson merger." Her face changed, confusion, then understanding, then something harder. She had seen it before. The missed birthdays. The empty chair at graduation. Work had always mattered more to Stephen than family. "Of course he did," she muttered, turning into Aunt Stephanie's waiting embrace. Uncle William rested a hand on my shoulder. "The doctor needs paperwork filled out," he said softly. "Why don't you let me take care of it?" I nodded, grateful. Paperwork felt impossible right now, like trying to solve equations while drowning. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Stephen lit up the screen. "How's your mother?" "Meeting ran long. Ordering takeout for dinner." Sharon read the message over my shoulder and made a sound, a mix between a sob and a bitter laugh. "Seriously? Grandma just died, and he's asking about dinner?" "Sharon," I started, but she cut me off. "No, Mom. Don't defend him. Not this time." She raked her fingers through her tangled hair, a gesture that was so much like her father it made my chest ache. "You know what? I'm done pretending everything's okay. Grandma always said." She stopped, tears welling in her eyes. "What?" I asked, though I already knew. "She said you deserved better. That we both did." Sharon wiped her face roughly, her words hitting me like a blow. Aunt Stephanie moved closer, her voice soft. "Helen worried about you, Mary," she said. "She saw what this marriage was doing to you, even if you couldn't." Uncle William added quietly, "Or wouldn't." The truth settled on me like ash, heavy and suffocating. 23 years of excuses, of smoothing things over, of pretending Stephen's indifference was just how he was. Mom had seen it all. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Stephen. "Should I wait dinner for you?" Sharon snatched the phone from my hand and started typing before I could stop her. "Sharon, don't." "Too late," she said, handing it back to me. I read what she'd written. "Mom's mother just died. Don't wait up. Better yet, don't wait at all." Threats appeared. Stephen was typing. Then they disappeared. Reappeared. Disappeared again. Finally, a single message came through. The moment I read Stephen's text, something inside me snapped. "We'll discuss this attitude when you get home." Attitude? My mother had just died, and that was his priority? Guess what? Sharon's voice rose sharply beside me, trembling with barely contained anger. The fact that his wife's mother just died, and he couldn't be bothered to show up? That he cares more about dinner than being here for his families? "Lower your voice, sweetheart," Aunt Stephanie murmured, though there was an unmistakable flicker of approval in her eyes. A nurse approached then, holding a clipboard. "Mrs. Nicholas, we need to discuss arrangements." The word arrangements hit me like a physical blow. Arrangements? My mother was gone, and Stephen was texting me about takeout. The absurdity of it all made me feel lightheaded. "I'll help," Sharon said firmly, taking my arm. "We don't need him for this." As we followed the nurse down the sterile hallway, I realized Sharon was right. We didn't need him. Maybe we never had. My mother's voice echoed in my head, her last words to me. "It's never too late to start over, sweetheart. Never too late to demand more." I squeezed Sharon's hand, feeling steadier than I had in years. "Stephen wants to discuss attitudes," I said quietly. "Fine. We'll discuss plenty when I get home. Starting with divorce papers." The funeral home smelled of artificial flowers and lingering secrets. I sat at a heavy mahogany desk, staring blankly at my mother's life insurance documents while the funeral director droned on about payment options. Something about the numbers felt wrong, but I couldn't make sense of it through the fog of my grief. "Mrs. Nicholas," the funeral director said gently, sliding another form toward me. "We'll need the initial payment today. The policy information your husband provided seems to have some discrepancies." I blinked. Discrepancies? The word tasted strange on my tongue. He cleared his throat and looked at me carefully. "The policy appears to have lapsed 3 months ago." "That's impossible," I said, my voice cracking. "My mother never missed a payment in her life." He hesitated, then continued. According to our records, the automatic payments stopped when the account was closed. What account? More paper shuffled. The joint account she shared with your husband. He was helping manage her finances, correct? The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Stephen had insisted on helping Mom with her finances last year. He'd worn her down, just like he did to me, with that mix of charm and quiet condescension. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone and opened our banking app. The joint account I shared with Stephen showed a balance far lower than it should. My heart pounded as I scrolled through the transactions. Casino withdrawals, online gambling payments, transfers to accounts I didn't recognize. Mrs. Nicholas, the funeral director's voice sounded far away. Are you all right? I need a moment, I managed, pushing back my chair. It scraped loudly against the floor. I need to make a call. In the hallway, I dialed Uncle William's number. He picked up on the first ring. The life insurance lapsed, I said without preamble. Stephen's been stealing money. Not just from me, from Mom. There was a long pause. Come to my office.
Now.
20 minutes later, I sat across from Uncle William's desk while he pulled up financial records on his computer. As my mother's attorney, he had access to everything. Jesus Christ, he muttered, scrolling through screen after screen. Mary, this goes deeper than you think. How much? I whispered. Initial estimate? Close to $700,000. The room spun. That's not possible. Someone would have noticed. The bank? Stephen works in finance. He knows how to hide things. Uncle William's voice hardened. He's been bleeding you dry for years. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was Stephen again, his smug face lighting up the screen. The text read, "Where are you? We need to discuss funeral arrangements." A bitter, ugly laugh bubbled up inside me. Discuss funeral arrangements? He stole my mother's life insurance money, and he wanted to discuss arrangements? Don't respond, Uncle William said sharply. We need to handle this carefully. I'm calling Sarah Chan, my criminal lawyer friend. We're going to need her. But first, we need to secure what's left. Do you have any accounts he can't access? Before I could answer, another text appeared. Found the coffee mess in the kitchen. Had Maria clean it up. You're welcome. Don't forget we have dinner with the Petersons tonight. The casual entitlement. The assumption that I would keep playing my role. Something inside me crystallized. I want him destroyed, I said quietly, surprised by how calm I felt. Uncle William studied me for a long moment.
He will be, but we have to be smart about this.
He doesn't know that we know. So, what do I do? Go home. Act normal. Have dinner with the Petersons. Let him think he's still in control while we gather evidence. Can you do that? I thought of Mom. Of all the times she'd told me I was stronger than I knew. Of Sharon's college fund now gone. Of 23 years of Stephen's manipulation. Yes, I said, standing up. I can do that. That night, dinner with the Petersons felt like a performance in hell. I sat at our oversized dining table, watching Stephen pour wine and tell his rehearsed stories, his charm perfectly in place. He wore the blue tie I'd given him for our 20th anniversary, bought, no doubt, with money he'd gambled away. Mary's taking some time off, Stephen said smoothly. Family matters. Sandra Peterson's face crumpled into faux sympathy. Oh yes, we heard about your mother. Such a shock. I gripped my fork, imagining driving it straight through Stephen's hand as he reached for more wine. Yes, I said, my voice steady. Quite unexpected. My phone vibrated in my lap. It was Sarah Chan documents ready. Meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. Excuse me, I murmured, standing. I need to check on dessert. In the kitchen, I leaned against the counter, breathing deeply. The tiramisu sat perfectly plated, another piece in Stephen's charade. Need helps? I startled. Sandra stood in the doorway, watching me closely. I'm fine, I said automatically. She stepped closer. Are you? I recognized that look. I used to wear it myself. I frowned. What do you mean? My first husband was a gambler too. Lost everything before I caught on. The signs are always there. We just choose not to see them. She handed me a business card. When you're ready, call her. Best divorce attorney in the state. Before I could respond, Stephen's voice boomed from the dining room. Ladies, we're dying of dessert deprivation out here. Sandra gave my arm a small squeeze. You'll know what to do. Stephen recovers quickly, his face shifting back to that practiced, patronizing smile. You're upset about your mother. You're not thinking clearly. Why don't you take one of your pills and calm down? I'm thinking very clearly. I snap back, my voice cold. I pull out my phone and thrust the screen in front of him. $700,000, Stephen. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? His facade cracks, just slightly. I can explain. The market's been volatile. I had to make some temporary adjustments. Save it for your lawyer. I turn to leave, but he grabs my arm, his grip tightening. Don't threaten me, Mary, he says, his voice dropping into something darker. You have no idea what you're doing. Who do you think pays for this house? Your clothes? Your lifestyle? I look at his hand on my arm, then into his eyes, my expression calm. You're right. I don't know what I'm doing. I let a small smile spread across my lips, the kind he uses when he wants to put someone in their place. Get some sleep, Stephen, I say softly, pulling free. You look tired. Must be all that work you're doing. I leave him standing there, his phone buzzing again in his pocket, and head upstairs. My hands shake as I send a quick text to Sarah. Make it 8 a.m. I'm ready. Sarah Chin's office looks like a war zone. Bank statements, legal documents, and printouts cover every surface. I sit at her desk, staring at a credit card statement in my hand. A charge for a jewelry store I've never even heard of, dated Valentine's Day. He's been busy, Sarah says, highlighting another line on the document. And not just with gambling. My throat tightens. There's someone else? Sarah looks at me carefully. Several, potentially. But that's not our primary concern. She slides another document across the desk. I stare at it. The words blur before my eyes. Foreclosure notice. Our house, I whisper. My house. The one I've spent 23 years turning into a home. He took out a second mortgage without your knowledge, Sarah explains. Technically illegal, but he forged your signature, convincingly. A knock interrupts us. Uncle William walks in, his face grim. The SEC filing just came through. Stephen's company is under investigation for financial irregularities. How bad? I ask, my voice barely audible. Criminal charges bad, he replies. The Peterson merger? It was a smokescreen. The company's about to implode. My phone buzzes. It's Sharon. Mom, where are you? Dad's acting weird. He's packing up his office stuff. I'll call you back, sweetheart. I respond quickly, looking at Sarah. How much time do we have? Hours, maybe, Sarah says, gathering up papers. Once the SEC announcement goes public, he'll run. Uncle William adds, with whatever money he can grab. Another text comes in. Sharon again. Mom, seriously. He's asking about Grandma's safety deposit box. My blood runs cold. The jewelry, I whisper. What jewelry? Sarah asks sharply. My mother's collection. Family heirlooms. She kept them in a safety deposit box at First National. My hands are shaking as I type a response to Sharon. He can't access it. He can't, Uncle William confirms. Helen changed the permissions last month. Only you can open it now. I remember Mom's insistence during her last visit to the bank. She knew. Somehow she knew. My phone rings, and Stephen's name flashes on the screen. I answer, putting it on speaker. Darling, he says, his voice syrupy and false. I need a favor. Your mother's safety deposit box. I need to inventory the contents for the estate. Could you meet me at the bank? Sarah shakes her head furiously, mouthing, No, I'm rather busy today. I say carefully. Perhaps tomorrow? It really needs to be now. For legal purposes. There's a pause, and I hear it. A crack in his tone. A hint of desperation. Unless you don't trust me? I force a smile into my voice. Of course I trust you. But I'm having lunch with Sharon. Why don't you join us? We can go to the bank afterward. Sharon's not answering my calls. That's odd, I say smoothly. She's sitting right here. Stephen is silent for a beat. Is everything okay at work, Stephen? The line goes dead. He's panicking, Uncle William says grimly. That makes him dangerous. Sarah looks up. Account freeze orders are processing. I've notified the SEC about his flight risk. But we need to move fast on that safety deposit box. Another text pings. This time, it's from an unknown number. Your mother knew what he was. She left something for you. Back of the box. Don't let him find it first. Aunt Stephanie, I breathe. She must have been with Mom. We need to go, Sarah interrupts. Now, before he figures out we're on to him. What about Sharon? I'll pick her up, Uncle William says quickly. Take her to my house until this blows over. As we rush to the elevator, my phone buzzes again. Stephen's text reads, I tried to protect you from this. Remember that. The threat in those words chills me, but beneath the fear, something else ignites. Rage. Pure and steady. Sarah, I say as we climb into her car. Forget playing defense. I want everything. The house. The accounts. His reputation. Everything. She smiles grimly. Now that's what I wanted to hear. The safety deposit box lies open before me. Empty, except for a single envelope. Mom's jewelry gone. Generations of family history stolen. The bank manager shifts uncomfortably. Mr. Nicholas accessed the box an hour ago. He had the proper documentation. Forged documentation, Sarah corrects sharply, already dialing her phone to alert the authorities. My hands tremble as I open the envelope. Inside is a single handwritten note from Mom. My dearest, if you're reading this, Stephen got here first. But remember, I always taught you to keep your real treasures closer to home. Love, Mom. My phone buzzes again. Sharon's text makes my blood freeze. Dad's at the house. He's acting strange. Says we need to talk. Sarah grabs my arm. Don't. We'll call the police. He's with my daughter. I'm already moving.
Call them.
But I'm going. The drive home is a blur. When I arrive, I find them in Stephen's study. Sharon is perched nervously on the leather sofa. Stephen stands by the window, disheveled and undone, his office clothes rumpled. Family meeting? I ask, keeping my voice steady. He turns, and for the first time, I see it, his carefully constructed facade crumbling. You've been busy today, I continue. So have you. How much did Mom's jewelry fetch? Sharon, I say carefully, keeping my voice calm but firm. Go to Uncle William's house.
Now?
She hesitates, looking between Stephen and me, but then she runs. Stephen doesn't try to stop her. You know what's in my pocket, don't you? He asks softly, his tone eerily calm.
I don't respond.
He pulls something out of his coat, a plane ticket and a fake passport. One button, he says, holding up his phone. One call to my friends at the SEC, and they'll love to hear about Uncle William's creative accounting back in the 90s. Or Aunt Stephanie's tax issues. Your family's not as clean as you think. The bottom drops out of my world. You destroy them too? I ask hoarsely. Why? Because I'm already destroyed, he says, his smile stretching into something terrible. Might as well make it a family affair. My phone buzzes, Sarah, probably with the police. But it's too late. The damage is already done. What do you want? I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. A head start. 24 hours. You keep the house and what's left of the accounts, and I keep the evidence against your family. He steps closer, holding out the pearls, my mother's pearls. And you keep these as a reminder. I stare down at them as they land in my palm. They feel heavier now, not just jewelry, but the weight of an impossible choice. Save my family or serve justice. Mom's voice echoes in my head. Keep your real treasures closer to home. I look up at Stephen, this stranger I'd spent half my life with, and make my decision. 24 hours, I say quietly. Then I burn your world down. He nods once, stepping past me. The front door clicks shut behind him with devastating finality. I sink into his chair, the pearls clutched in my fist, wondering if revenge is worth the price of becoming him. 23 hours and 47 minutes later, I find Mom's old recipe box at the back of the kitchen cabinet. Wrapped in yellow newspaper is a small red USB drive. My hands tremble as I plug it into my laptop. Folders appear, dozens of them, meticulously labeled with dates stretching back 5 years. Financial records, email screenshots, photos of Stephen with other women, bank transfers, gambling receipts. My mother, the quiet gardener who never touched a computer, had been building a case against my husband for years. My phone rings. It's Sarah. Mary, we found him. Private airfield outside the city. Flight plan filed for Buenos Aires. I glance at the clock. 13 minutes left of his head start. And the SEC evidence against my family? I ask, my voice tense. Bluff, Sarah replies. We checked. There's nothing. He played you. The recipe box feels heavier in my hands. How fast can you get to the airfields? Already on my way. Police, too. I grab my keys, tucking the USB drive safely into my pocket. Tell them to wait. I need 5 minutes with him first. The private terminal feels sterile, its fluorescent lights making everything look sickly. Stephen stands at the counter, arguing with a clerk. He's still wearing yesterday's suit, but somehow he looks 10 years older, the edges of him fraying. Problems with your flight? I ask, stepping into the room. He spins around, his face contorting as he sees me. You're early. Mom always said punctuality was a virtue. I pull the USB drive from my pocket, along with keeping good records. The color drains from his face. What is that? Everything. I step closer, my voice steady. Mom knew what you were doing. Every transaction. Every affair. Every lie. I pause, watching the panic flicker across his face. She was protecting me all along. His mask slips completely. He lunges for the drive, but I step easily out of reach. He's not as quick as he used to be. It's over, Stephen, I say. SEC agents are outside. The police, too. You promised me 24 hours, he snarls, his voice cracking. You're just like me, breaking promises when it's convenient. No, I set Mom's recipe box on the counter, staring him down. I'm like my mother. Patient, thorough, and done with your games. He laughs bitterly, the sound hollow. What do you want?
Money?
I can get more. I want you to know what it feels like, I say softly, to realize everything you built was a lie. That someone you trusted was watching, waiting, collecting evidence of every mistake. His face hardens. You really think you can survive without me? You're nothing but a housewife. With what? I ask calmly. A daughter you gambled away. A mother who outsmarted you. A family who actually loves me. I open the recipe box and look inside. Go ahead, Stephen. Take a look. He hesitates, then peers in. Nestled among the cards is a single bank statement, Mom's final account, showing more zeros than he'd ever expected. She left everything to me, I say quietly, the day before she died. Almost like she knew what was coming. His hand moves, but the sound of doors opening behind us freezes him. Sarah steps in with 2 FBI agents flanking her. Time's up, I say, watching him stiffen. As they lead him away, I call out one last thing. Oh, and Stephen? The pearls were fake. Mom sold the real ones years ago. She used the money for Sharon's trust fund. His protests echo through the terminal, but I don't hear them. Sarah squeezes my shoulder. You okay? I look at the recipe box, this small container of family wisdom and quiet love. I'm better than okay, I say softly, closing it. I'm free. Outside, the sun rises over the airfield. Across town, Sharon is safe with Uncle William and Aunt Stephanie, probably making breakfast and talking about her future, a future secured by a grandmother who saw everything and said nothing until the perfect moment. The garden blooms exactly as Mom planned. I kneel in the soft earth, planting seedlings she started in her greenhouse. Her last project, now mine to finish. Sharon appears beside me, holding 2 steaming mugs. The prosecutor called. Dad took the plea deal. I take the coffee, breathing in its warmth. How do you feel about that? She settles onto the bench.
Relieved.
No trial. No more pretending. No more secrets, I agree. The garden blooms steadily as the morning light catches on the recipe box sitting by the window. A legacy of love and strength passed down quietly, just like Mom always intended.